Joining me now is GB News host of the Saturday 5, Darren Grimes, and the former Labour MP and Minister of State for Europe, Denis McShane. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. I'm sorry it's to discuss this ongoing horror show of this story. But I have to say, coming to you, Denis, our asylum system is utterly broken. How can this happen?
Very simply, because we've had years of government before the Tories and Liberal Democrats came in 14 years ago that haven't taken it seriously. I'm interested in this guy wandering around, going into shops, going into churches and so on. In any other European country, you wouldn't be able to get into a shop or get any public service without showing an ID card. We had ID cards in 2010. Theresa May abolished them. We then had Home Secretaries like Priti Patel, Suella Braverman, leaving James Cleverly for the time being, who didn't take any of this seriously, didn't put the investment in to ship these people home quickly. Your immigration ministers like Robin Jenvrig, all of them playing Tory internal party politics and ignoring the needs of the nation, who want to know who's in the country, and if they've committed these sex crimes, they can and should be sent home. Why not? It's the politicians to blame, in the sense that you can pass a little tweak called a statutory instrument, that's a mini law in the House of Commons, on saying that you had to show 5 years of being a devout Methodist or Catholic or whatever Christianity he claimed to have converted to before it would be valid. But obviously somebody told him, this little stunt, get on your knees, don't bang your forehead on the floor like a good Muslim, hold your hands together and look up to Christ on the cross, and you'll be safe. It's cynical, it's a disgrace, and it's exactly why the sloppiness and laziness of Tory ministers is just really got to come to an end.
You say Tory ministers, however, the Conservatives, some would argue, playing devil's advocate, have tried to tackle the immigration problem with Rwanda, for example, but Labour have constantly voted against pretty much everything the Conservatives have put forward with regard to immigration. So whose fault is this? Whose fault is it that that poor woman is in hospital with severe burns that will mean she lives in pain for the rest of her life?
Do you know, I don't put it down to any particular party. I say a plague on all their houses, because I would argue that this actually all started under Tony Blair, opening the floodgates. But I definitely think the British people right now, Dawn, are being gaslit. There will be so many viewers watching this right now who just say, time and again, we vote for robust border controls. I keep voting and keep being told that numbers will come down. I don't think we should be welcoming anyone through the asylum system until we can actually prove to the British public that we have some semblance of sanity within the system itself. I think the Archbishop of Canterbury has a few things he ought to answer for as well, because we've heard about this before. The Liverpool bomb, that was a guy who said he converted to Christianity.
There's been at least 2 other recent examples.
Exactly. Yeah. And it was a priest that said, yeah, of course, you know, he's seen God, he's come to the faith, the one true God, and all the rest of it. And here we bring him in, come on, come all. And the British public are just saying, how naive, how stupid can you be? And we are constantly causing, you know, a quick Google search, the Libyan in Reading that stabbed 3 gay men, right?
Yep.
A Libyan heritage man, it was Salman Abdi in the Manchester Arena bombing, an Iranian-born man who killed an 87-year-old surrogate grandmother, his surrogate grandmother allegedly, in what was deemed to be circumstances of appalling brutality. The list goes on and on. It's a list longer than my arm, Dawn. So what are we doing about it? People are still coming in now. We need to get serious about this, because until we do, it's going to happen time and again. And do you know, I wish we were a bit more like France, because I think we would be on the streets if we were, and we ought to be.
Denis, Denis, just shut the asylum system down until you can absolutely prove who you are, what your background is, and why you have a right to be in this country.
That is what we should have been doing from day one. But to do that, you've got to have the people to interrogate these guys.
But we have people interrogating him.
We've got, for heaven's sake, we've got none at all. We don't have ID cards. Rishi Sunak has invited in 962,000 immigrants, not asylum seekers, immigrants from many of these countries, and we don't know who they are or why they're coming in because we haven't trained up our own people to do these jobs. So it's all interconnected for sure, and unless we actually learn just best practice from other countries, I could cite examples. Rwanda is such a red herring. We're going to send a few asylum seekers to a country that's got a dreadful human rights record that treats women abominably, and they're not going to be under lock and key. And the only country that's tried to do that was Israel, and they sent some people from Africa down there, asylum seekers, and within a couple of months they'd walked out and went back to Israel. It's a diversion and a joke because nobody, Robert Jenrick, Rishi Sunak, Priti Patel, Theresa May, will take responsibility or tell the British people we need to know who is in our country, and we can't do that unless we copy other countries in Europe and have forms of identity cards.
Two things. Obviously, not all asylum seekers or immigrants are like this piece of filth. Many of them are genuine, and we can't tar everyone with the same brush. We've got to be very careful that we do stick with that. But Dennis, just want to come to a point you make about ID cards. Do you think someone who is willing to throw a corrosive substance in a woman's face and throw a child on the floor is going to abide by the rules of an ID card?
No, of course not. Criminals, there's many criminals going into prison for different crimes in countries with ID cards as are going into prison in Britain. The majority of sex offenders, the vast majority, over 80%, are white Brits. They're not people from Muslim-majority countries. But what you can't do, for example, I was at a seminar, I don't want to go into too many details, with very senior Tory politicians, myself, other Labour guys, and Swiss politicians in Switzerland a few weeks ago. They said, we don't understand Britain. You can't get medical care, you can't get schooling, you can't get social services unless you can show you've got an ID card and have a relationship here. And we, as I said, we started doing that in 2010, far too late. The back end of the Labour government, the first thing Theresa May, and above all the Liberal Democrats, because the left were just as reprehensible, said, oh no, this is the Gestapo, we have to get rid of them. And so this man, and he wanted to get he was working in a pizza parlour, was that right? Did we hear? So you couldn't get that, yes, you couldn't get that job anywhere in Europe unless you showed that you had an ID card and the right to be here.
But Darren, we appear to be going down the rabbit hole of ID.
Sorry, you're right, it's not that important.
Solve the problem?
Well, we wouldn't even be having this discussion if we hadn't welcomed a load of Islamist extremists to the country who have precious little respect for women, precious little respect for the laws of the land, and precious little respect for actually sharing British values and views. I think it's absolutely absurd to actually sit there and argue that we need to be more like Europe on this when Europe is absolutely rampant with the same problems. It was Angela Merkel that welcomed, what, 500,000 to 1 million people to Germany? What's that done to Germany? Look at Sweden. It is an insanity. Europe has lost its mind. We in Britain need to remember that.
Darren, just leave the Europe bashing behind for a second.
It is a point, though.
It's a fair point. Rishi Sunak has invited exactly the same number of people into Britain from Pakistan, India and Nigeria, principally, and nobody is saying peep about that.
I am.
Well, good. I mean, very good for you. It's a battery of measures that are needed. Above all, we need staff. Patrick Chisty, one of your colleagues here...
You keep saying that. Sorry, Dennis. You keep saying we need staff, but it's the staff that have just said this week that Turkey's not a safe country. It's the staff in the Home Office that are the problem. They are the ones that aren't actually ensuring that we can have a robust border policy that ensures that the British public are safe. So I don't understand why you keep saying this. The staff right now are saying Turkey, where 3 million British people don't go on holiday, isn't safe to send migrants back to.
It's a real problem, unfortunately, because if you really want the sexist and ugly anti-women people in this Britain, in this country, talk to Ofcom and ask why they don't. Their head of Ofcom is an elite member of the Blob, doubled her salary when she went to run Ofcom, done nothing to stop online sexual abuse, especially of children. We go right back to the objectification of children by Rupert Murdoch that just turned our country into sort of cheap, sleazy, low-grade porn in our own newspapers.